Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stover. President Muhammadu Buhari last week signed the 2018 budget estimates of 9.12 trillion naira into law after 7 months of delay. The president was quick to raise concerns over cuts made by the National Assembly in the 2018 budget amounting to 347 billion naira in some critical areas that include health and infrastructural development that are of great benefit to the populace. Now, analysts say many Nigerians share in the concerns, especially as the legislators introduced more than 6,000 projects of their own, amounting to more than 570 billion naira that ordinarily should have been handled by local governments. There are more concerns that the budget of the National Assembly itself is increased from 125 billion naira to more than 139 billion naira, representing a 14.5 billion naira increase. However, the National Assembly holds that its action is guided by the Constitution. This has prompted more reactions as analysts want the executive to go to court in the interest of advancing development in Nigeria. Now, the 2018 budget, the grey areas, and the true picture for overall growth is the focus tonight after this report by Leah Katum-Abatunde.
When the Nigerian economy slowed and entered into a recession in 2016, government rolled out the Strategic Implementation Plan (SRP) to support the 2016 expansionary budget. This was followed with the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan (ERGP) in 2017, a medium-term plan designed to build sustainable growth, and its key reform initiatives were infused with the 2018 budget.
We want to fire on the two cylinders of oil and non-oil. We need oil to help us to develop non-oil, and that is why we're looking at the joint venture oil assets to take some from oil and move into non-oil.
This is the largest ever budget by the federal government. The breakdown shows 7.17 trillion naira projected revenue. It is 30.26% above that of 2017. 9.12 trillion naira expenditure and 1.95 trillion naira deficit, representing a deficit to GDP ratio of 1.74%.
We plan to continue to spend more on ongoing infrastructure projects that have potentials for job creation and inclusive growth. We will continue to leverage private capital and counterpart funding for the delivery of infrastructure.
A major concern is the rising human population, which is not in tandem with economic growth. In addressing fundamental human development challenges, the 2018 budget will see the delivery of key projects and initiatives in agriculture and rural development, defense, education, health, housing, power, social intervention, and lots more. In achieving these, Minister Udoma says growing the economy requires strategic partnerships with the private sector, and government is ready to go all the way. In Abuja, I'm Leah Katum-Abatunde, NTA News.
That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's introduce our guest to you. We'd like to welcome to this program Honorable Alhassan Adodogwa, is Chief Whip of the House of Representatives. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We're also joined tonight by Senator Udoma. He's Minister of Budget and National Planning. Minister, thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Also here tonight is Senator Ita Enang. He's Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senate. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
And we're also joined tonight by Comrade Uchenna Ekwe. He's Head of International Relations Department of the Nigeria Labour Congress. And just to mention that he was Vice Chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Labour between 1999 and 2003.
Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. As usual, we acquaint you with the procedures on this program. At the appropriate time, you can get to join in the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on screen. We advise you to take advantage of them. However, for those who will be phoning in tonight, we say this every Tuesday. At the appropriate time, once your call gets through to the studio, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. Just reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And the best way to know that your call has been passed through is you'll see your name appear on screen. Once your name is on screen, it means your call is through to the studio. And just go ahead with a question or comment. Don't bother about the greetings. Just go straight to the point and keep it as short as possible so that others can also get on the platform and air their views. So once again, welcome to Tuesday Live. Thanks for being with us. Let's begin looking at the 2018 budget, matters arising. But first, to put it in real context for us, let's go to the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma. And yes, 9.12 trillion. But the question on the lips of many Nigerians, the ordinary citizens, would be how much of this is available to kickstart the implementation of this budget?
Thank you very much, Cyril. Let me say that the 2018 budget builds on the 2016 and 2017 budgets. Basically, this is a budget of consolidation. So we're building on the achievements of the previous budgets, so that you will see in many of the projects are actually existing projects that we are trying to complete. So it's a continuous. Many of the projects, contracts have been awarded, and so it's a question of we're waiting, and now that the budget has been signed, we will start to get resources out there.
So we're not bothered about what should be a deficit of maybe close to 2 trillion.
Well, you know that we had said from the beginning that we would borrow, but prudently. Would borrow to facilitate the takeoff of both the budget and the economy, but that we would borrow prudently. And our borrowing is within the deficit for this budget, for instance, is 1.7%, and the limit within the fiscal responsibility is 3%. So the borrowing is actually quite prudent.
All right. Well, now let's come to one of those controversial issues about this budget, and that has to do with the National Assembly, which cut down some projects, and this would have cost about 347 billion, and replaced or substituted. Let's hear from you why that happened.
I think looking at the perspective of our discussions from the onset, I think it's something that has some constitutional inclination. When you talk about the budget, it's not about the budget maybe as a program or as a project presented by the government. Right from the beginning, what you call budget is something that is predicated on the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which of course provides the code for operations of the institutions of governance. And secondly, I would also want to draw the attention of Nigerians, especially the journalists, of sometimes issues like this are normal. I have been in the House of Representatives for the past 27 years. The issue of having discrepancies with the presentation of the executive arm of government as a budget and what the National Assembly might have subsequently eventually passed is a normal thing. But what is only not normal at the moment is the way we're handling it. Of course, you don't expect a separate institution presenting a document to another institution for consideration. And the wisdom for that presentation and consideration is the fact that here in the second arm of government, the legislative arm of government, you have what you call representatives of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the wisdom behind the section of the Constitution, especially Section 81, which allows the executive arm of government to initiate the estimates. Even the Constitution calls it estimates and proposals, present to the National Assembly. I want to believe the wisdom is that the National Assembly that will now act in the latter position has that overall mandate and power to look at the content of the budget in relation to the aspiration and expectations of the people we represent. This is what we have always gotten wrongly. And I want to say, with every sense of responsibility, that a government does not simply signify the executive arm of government. It also does not signify the judiciary or the legislature. It is the collective synergy of these three arms of government that you call government. And that collective responsibility, that spirit of collective responsibility must always be taken seriously. Having said this much, I want to now respond to your question on the basis of the fact that what was presented to the National Assembly, and in line with the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, specifically Section 81, which empowers the executive to present the budget, and Section 80, subsection 1, 2, and 3, which empowers the National Assembly to look at the budget, consider it in relation to the expectation of the people, gives us the power. Fundamentally, we have the power to cut, add, subtract, add whatever it means. Because the intent was for the National Assembly to now consider the budget as a document that will reflect on the socio-economic well-being, the general interest of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So these things that you call cuts were not as if were deliberate cuts to undermine maybe the policies or programs of government, no. And some of the things that we have added, especially the 300, about 300, you said 300 or 600?
Yeah, well,
about the number of projects we have added. The projects we added were the projects we added, about 6,000, like you said, were projects that are funded not basically from the so-called cuts of the other submissions by the executive arm of government. Most of these projects were added as a result of the benchmark which we have jacked up. From the presentation of the executive, the benchmark was just $45 per barrel, which we had graciously considered to jack up to $51 per barrel. And one thing that will interest you, Cyril, was while we were doing that in the very close synergy with some of the representatives of the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, particularly with due respect to him, the Minister of Budget and Planning. Some of these things, we were doing it in consultations with them, trying to operate on the same page. So it was this additional $6 per barrel that we have gathered across the spectrum that gave us that opportunity to now provide for some other sensitive projects which we feel our constituents are entitled to have. It was not as if we decided to flagrantly maybe undermine what the executive arm of government presented to us. After all, the executive arm of government and the legislative arm of government, most especially, will bear all sense of responsibility if the government fails. It's not as if it's the executive arm of government that has failed. We in the legislature also, we share with them that failure, and we will never wish ourselves a failure in a government that we are proudly part of.
All right. But then the president raised concerns while signing this document into law, and his concern was basically about these cuts, critical sectors, he said, he mentioned them, and he raised questions, and he said what has happened might affect the implementation. Besides, he says the projects that had been introduced were not, in ordinary terms, well thought out and costed properly. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, Mr. President raised concerns. Mr. President did not raise objection. And having raised the concerns, he said, nevertheless, in the interest of the economy and moving on the government, I have assented to the budget. And Mr. President also indicated that, having assented to the budget, that he will now send amendments to the budget, or he will send supplementary appropriation or environment. Now, what we're working on now is the areas of that the executive will now make presentation to the legislature for the purpose of it being redressed. So what we've moved on now, the bill having become an act of the having become a law. We're working on the modalities for the implementation of the budget. And one of the greatest modalities is, how do we raise money to fund the budget? How do we get the amendments we need worked on early? Because we are conscious of the timetable of the National Assembly. Because the National Assembly, by its timetable, is likely to see between 2 or 3 weeks from the 3rd of July, and then proceed on its normal annual 2-month, 8 weeks summer vacation. And we are in a hurry to get that done so that we can take advantage of the 2-3 weeks they are likely to sit. So that if by the time we get the approval, then while they are on their legitimate vacation, the process of procurement and implementation will be commenced. Again, our way of addressing it, as indicated by Mr. President and as indicated by the executive, is that we will still try to make effort to return Nigeria to a January, December budget or fiscal year. Yeah. Then these are all the matters we're considering. That is why we are having raised the concern by Mr. President, having raised the concern, he gave the options and what is going to be, what he's going to do to make sure that we move on.
All right, he gave options and said he was going to consider sending a
amendment, yes, a supplementary.
But then there's also the question, and I'd like you to respond to that. There are two issues, but the first, let's deal with the first. How do you respond to the thinking that, well, he's raised concerns over this? Is that not stating that, well, if at the end of this fiscal year we don't get these critical projects done the way we had intended, it wouldn't be my fault? You know whose fault it is.
No, Mr. President is not saying that.
Well,
Mr. President is saying, he said, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to implement them. And so, having said so,
that's semantics. It will be difficult, if not impossible.
Yes,
so if it becomes impossible, then you know who to blame.
No. Mr. President will always take responsibility because he knows that the buck stops with him, and there is always a way out. That is why he said, "Look, I will send amendment, and it will only be if the legislature does not approve, and the legislature has given undertaking on their own that bring it. We are on the same page with you. We will consider it for you, for the country, be within the time available to us. We are also with you in returning the country to a January, December budget year. But these are our explanations. But despite these our explanations, Mr. President, we are with you in making this country and the economy to succeed." I'm very pleased with the Chief Whip of the House of Representatives, because in his submission here, he has said the government, if the government has a bad name, if anything, it is the government. And the government is not just the executive. The government is the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. And so everybody is working together with President Buhari to make sure that the APC government succeeds.
All right. We'll save the second part of that question, because let's go over to Comrade here, and after that we'll bring that other part of it. But Comrade.
Well, I found it interesting that at least on this platform, we, the ordinary Nigerian, now see that the legislators and the executive are trying to patch up the situation. But the fact remains, and one thing has been achieved. At least there is no debate now who has right to do what on the budget. But having said that, and the National Assembly haven't done that, it is politically immoral for them to do some of the additions they did to themselves. And the National Assembly should know that. It is their right. The accusation of anybody that they padded the budget doesn't exist, because it's their right to deal with the estimates. But in doing that, the Assembly must be very cautious on how they are doing the cuts. For example, it is irreconcilable for us in the labor movement to see the Assembly cut 5 billion from the pension fund and for public service funds. How can you do that? At a time that we know that there is a crisis, huge crisis, in pensions and this repayment. And having discussed with this same assembly, and they intervened positively last time. In fact, in some meetings with the minister, and some of them were, on finding ways. I can't understand how then suddenly there was a cut in pension fund. Either there is a lack of coordination from the level of the principal officers of the assembly, to the point of maybe the appropriation chairman, or some elements, because the principal officers must be alert to be sure that people who might have some other intentions don't deal with the budget. I take another example. The court in the fund allocated for Enugu Airport and the second Niger bridge. Why I say I suspect there's a problem somewhere, because the Southeast caucus of the Senate reacted formally, and in their reaction, distinguished Senator Baribe even said that they pushed for a rise to 3.5 billion on Enugu Airport. But what came out became 500 million. That they will, what in his interview, investigate where it happened. So the National Assembly must in the amendment to this act be alert that people are worried about the morality of some of the decisions they are taking.
All right. Okay, so let's go to the second part of the question I earlier asked Senator Inang. I said there are two questions. Yes, it's good to hear that the executive and the legislature are in the process of resolving it, but you will recall that this is a recurring thing in this country.
Yeah.
The budget goes to the National Assembly, it comes out, there are allegations of the National Assembly putting in certain things, jacking up the benchmark, and the executive says, look, this is what we plan on this particular benchmark, and if you shift it, it is the executive that will implement. We cannot do what you're asking us to do. Now, a number of Nigerians have said the best way to resolve this is to approach the Supreme Court and for once determine who has powers to implement, introduce new projects into the budget estimates. You're a lawyer.
Yeah, it would be the best legally to approach the Supreme Court, but politically it will not be wise. Because in Nigeria, it is taken that whoever takes the other to court is the aggressor. And it will put the government in very bad light. And the court cannot on their own unless somebody approaches the court. And if before you approach the court, you must show that you have a locus. An independent person cannot, because you have to show either you are the executive or the legislature. Otherwise, you will not be able to have locus standing. But at the same time, Mr. President is simply not saying that the legislature cannot make input. He's simply saying, Mr. President is saying, there should be a level of consultation, and that in the entire process, I was in consultation with you, through my ministers, through my advisors, through my liaison officers. Yeah, there were things that were done which appears to be overreaching. So I wouldn't advise at this time for us to approach the Supreme Court. Because when you approach the Supreme Court, whichever decision you come back with is either going to open the gate for whoever wins too wide, that the other arm of government will. After all, the provision of the Constitution is very clear that the executive shall conceive an estimate, right, and the legislature will lay it before the legislature, and the legislature will approve, will consider it and approve as thought fit.
Okay.
I mean, as approve and approve. But that is also why you have public hearings, presentations by the ministers, defense by the heads of the MDAs. Finally, on the issue of the on this issue of the 2018 budget, there were, when the benchmark was conceived to be raised, the honorable minister was consulted.
Yes.
We went with the honorable minister, Odoma, the minister of state, the minister of finance, myself, my colleague in the House of Representatives, the Director General Budget Office of the Federation. We went in a meeting led by the Deputy President of the Senate on the part of the legislature, and engaged and agreed, raised the benchmark from $45 per barrel to $51 per barrel. And this is how the extra $6 will be spent. Use $2 to reduce deficit. use this for this. And the one for the executive, the minister had to approach the authorities and brought the executive project. So this is the best way to work, and we worked on that. It is not to approach the Supreme Court, and it is not to seek legal interpretation. But I just want to say that on the final, we have reached a level of rapprochement. We are working on implementation and putting more and emphasizing less on areas of disagreement.
All right, because I was just going to say, would it be that the executive is wary because it might lose out?
No. Executive will win, but then whoever wins doesn't. You see, the court,
like a win-win
the
situation.
court gives justice. It doesn't give peace. The court and judgment of the court gives justice and not peace.
Minister.
No, I was going to say that I will not express a view on whether we should go to court or not. I'll leave that. But I would like to say that whatever happens, there is a need for continuous consultation.
Right.
In the case of this budget, and all previous budgets, there's always been consultation. I think basically the president was not happy because of some things that came to us as a surprise. In fact, as a shock. Given the level of consultation, we didn't expect those cuts. We didn't expect the cuts to Mambila. We didn't expect the cuts to Enugu Airport. We didn't expect that the fencing of Unity schools would be. So I think it was that we didn't expect those things. None of them was mentioned to us before, and so that was why. But going forward, as Itanang said, the president did say, because the president, basically, the government is extremely transparent. Whatever happens, the president always says it as is. Indeed, I wanted to say that the whole budget process under this administration is more transparent than it has ever been. We are very, very transparent. Whatever is happening, everybody knows. In fact, one of the things that we have done is immediately after the budget is signed, we produce this Citizens Guide. We produced it for 2018, we produced it 2017, we produced it 2016, so that people can know what is in the budget, what are the contents of the budget. You can also check the website of the budget office. So basically, we are running a very, very transparent regime because we want people's involvement in the budget. The budget can only improve and get better the more the general public and everybody is involved in the process. So that's the point I wanted to make.
All right, Honorable.
Yes.
The National Assembly budget also had an increase by about 4.5 billion, and questions have been raised in the public space about that as well. Easily you would say, oh, while the National Assembly is cutting down on critical areas, it's increasing its own budget. Is it justifiable?
I think, like I've rightly stated in my preamble, I still want to go further to explain that, like I have said, most of the additions we have made and the increment we have also made were done or secured on the basis of this benchmark that we have raised. Apparently, you jacked the benchmark from 45 to 51, having now a surplus of $6 per barrel. Then you need to look at this surplus, these things that you have generated, these savings you have made for the country, and now see how you can apply it. One, of course, we have to look at the background we all came from, which simply means a representative democracy. We came from a background, the popular background, that we are representing our people. And one must always remember that you must have to take something back home. And I want to believe what we have done in the increment to the National Assembly budget was not exclusive. We still remember that we have two other institutions of government that have to benefit from this increment. We increased, like you said, about 14%.
14.5 billion.
4 point something billion. to the budget of the National Assembly. I also want to put it to you clearly, without any fear of contradiction, that we have equally added 10 billion naira to the budget of the judiciary. That has not been raised. We have also added, based on the savings we have made out of the jack up we had in the budget, in the benchmark price. We have also added 50% of that increment and applied on the capital submissions by the executive. That has not been mentioned. So it was not as if we did like a home business, or we just added to our own.
So you're looking at the surplus.
We have ordered the surplus was used to jack up the budgets of the two other institutions of government.
Okay,
and the intention was for us to be justifiable.
That should take care of the 14.5 billion increase. That's already, the public would say the National Assembly is having a lot of the chunk of whatever estimates are put out there. And here is another 14.5 billion as an increase. Does it bother you that the public doesn't see it this way?
Well, it's because you see, the problem we have always had is the fact that the public is made to look at it that way. But the reality is that when you say the National Assembly, it's not as if we're increasing our budgets to our personal benefits. For instance, when you talk about the constituency project that have always been controversial, these are projects that we take to the doorsteps of our constituents. And it's what you can now rely on and go back and look for what you call re-election. This is democracy, and a representative democracy for that matter. As long as you cannot be able to provide something to put on the table of the people that brings you to power, then certainly you have nowhere to start to continue. So the basis remains justifiable as far as I'm concerned, justifiable in the first place because we have an increment, and that surplus should be shared among the arms of government. It is also justifiable because these are monies that we have applied into other critical development projects that have to do with the welfare, socio-economic welfare of our people. This is a situation, you have a situation at hand where people are crying out of hunger. You have a situation where the states and the local governments are underfunded on the basis of their, on the basis of their statutory transfers. Then certainly what we do by way of constituency projects and funding our local projects through constituency component is like you are trying to also help government consolidate on some of these gaps already created by deficiency of funds at the state and the local government level. It is for me justifiable, and it is something that even in the course of our consultation we have discussed to a greater extent such implications and such concerns. And we only feel, I want to say with all sense of responsibility, how we feel in the National Assembly is that even when we have consulted ourselves through you people who represent the executive arm of government, we personally feel worried and disturbed as if you people are very economical with the necessary information that you need to feed Mr. President.
I think I need to respond on that.
That kind of mispresentation of what we're agreeing on. And I still want to believe that we still have more to consult upon as long as we want to continue on the same page. Consultation will be very important. We continue to consult, and also we need to engage ourselves in what we call pre-budgetary engagements. Pre-budgetary engagements will help us. If right from the beginning, when you want to start conceptions and considerations of our estimates, you carry maybe even the principal officers along. Sometimes we can even direct our committee headships to engage with you, so that right from the beginning, from the onset of budgetary preparations, the National Assembly members and the relevant committees will be directly in touch with the relevant agencies of government. At the end of the day, you will never have this kind of discrepancy. Cyril, this is my position, and the other one is even the position of the institution, that sometimes we consult only to be mispresented.
I need to say something about that, about misrepresentation. There has been none whatsoever. Every bit of consultation, whatever is agreed, the president is briefed. And there's no misrepresentation. Not only that, the position of the executive, I actually wrote a letter stating the position of the executive on the various issues. So it's actually in writing. So there's no misrepresentation whatsoever. At no point in any of our discussions were we told that they were going to cut the allocations to Mambila, that they were going to cut the allocations to East-West Road, that they were going to cut the allocation to Enugu Airport, that they were going to cut the allocations for fencing of schools. At no point were any of those things ever this thing. So I don't think it is fair to blame the officials of government for misrepresenting. It is not fair, because none of that was ever We were never told that, and it was never agreed. That is number one. And so that is very, very clear. What was agreed, we stand by. And what was agreed, as I said, as Itaning also said, was the increase in the benchmark. That was agreed. But
what it will be applied to.
What it will be applied to was also agreed. But the factor of the cuts. So, I think that it's just to set this in straight, because I hold National Assembly members, because I was a member myself, the highest esteem. We get on very well. We meet, we discuss. And whatever we discuss, I brief my boss, and then I get back to them. And I give them a firm, say, this is the position of the executive. So on every issue, we always make sure that that happens. So it is not as a result of that. I just want to just make it clear.
All right, this is just to get the rider to what he's just said. Right. That might be an oversight. And you know, by nature, the budget process is such a very complex thing. Maybe by virtue of the complexity involved in the budget process, such was an oversight. And that was why the disposition of the National Assembly leadership, especially myself, who represented the leadership on the day of signing the budget, we have all agreed that, having believed in the fact that we are working as one government, whatever amendment, supplementary, or any review that the president is now disposed to bring to the National Assembly, such things are very much welcome.
Yeah,
we will be party to that review. We will accept whatever. After all, the president is the leader of the government. Even though we are part of the government, and he is the leader of the government, he may have direction that he wants to follow. If there is any derailment on the approved version of the budget, the National Assembly as a leadership and collectively the National Assembly will be disposed enough to look at this review and make sure that the right thing in the expectation of Mr. President is done.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, interesting that all four of you, at some point, at one time, or the other, members of the
members.
Yes.
And I think that was why we have not had any issue with regards whether the National Assembly has such powers to do what it has done or not.
But comrade, yes, you
it's better to say that Senator Odoma was chairman of Appropriations Committee before he became the chief whip of the Senate. Was chairman of Senate Committee on Appropriations before he became the chief whip of the
House Committee on.
Yes, of course, and you vote in the House.
Yes, rules and business.
Yes,
which includes business of the budgeting as well.
Yes.
Well,
yes, what coverage?
Well, I wouldn't, maybe on a lighter mood, but I watched the minister twice mention those things they were not informed about the court.
Right.
And twice I have not had the minister mention on the court on the pension.
5 billion, yes. Please include that. It's very important.
I want to know who did the court.
All right. So
it's very important.
Two, I think that we all, as people of this country, must sum up courage to deal with these issues of the budget, the constituency project, and what it really means in practical terms. And what I mean by this is that in addressing the challenge of the constituency project, including the ordinary Nigerian must get involved.
Right.
Because the pressure they put on the assembly members, the assembly member is not supposed to be running foundations to be sharing motorcycle to people. Where is he supposed to get the money to be sharing motorcycle to people if he receives his salary? To be sharing machines, to be sharing the things and the kind of things that is done. So we, as a people collectively, must be determined to make sure that people should go and do their work. Because when these pressures come, all the issues of constituency project comes in. Because some of these projects, clearly we know, are not properly conceptualized in the first place. And you just put it because the people know there are pressure. So the ordinary Nigerian must also be courageous to know that they will allow people to run their business and question them accordingly. So that projects should be things that will be done to influence the life of the people.
Well, already reactions have started coming in by way of messages, and one of them, of course, is to the Chief Whip. And yes, asking that, well, you said the decision, you said you want to take something home. The question is, did the National Assembly consult the people they are representing?
Yes.
Or they just took the decision that way without consultation with the people?
This is a good question, and I would like to graciously respond to that.
Right.
Like he has rightly said, Honorable Senator Eta Enang, he was one time a chairman of the House Committee on Rules and Business. There was no time in the past where we had subjected money bills to a public hearing. Money bills are naturally not being subjected to public hearings. But for the first time, under the leadership of the chairman of the National Assembly, Senator Bukola Saraki, we had for the first time subjected 2018 money bill to public hearing. And at that level, I think it is a kind of consultation, allowing people to now come and participate with us in the process of considering the budget of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And in most cases, we are constituency people. You have people that you represent. We go home virtually on daily basis. In my own case, I operate like a day student. I come to Abuja every Monday and return to my constituency every Friday. 360 days. This has been the nature of my operations. So as long as members, which I expect do the same, consult and interact with their people, certainly we know where the shoe pinches. And that is why we feel we are under moral obligation to place one thing or the other for our constituents to really benefit from what you call the dividends of democracy. And we are the best representative of the government at the grassroots level. Buhari may not be able to be in the whole 360 federal constituency. He may not also be able to be in the whole 109 senatorial constituencies. But we do, because we are his ambassadors on ground. And what we always do in the budget is being done in good faith and with the intention, moral intention, to complement some of the ideals of the government of Muhammadu Buhari. A lot of us, like I've said that time, a lot of members, including members of the opposition, Cyril, have tremendous respect for Mr. President. Mm-hmm. We cherish his moral integrity as a leader. And we also stand to be so proud. We are proud of some of the achievements and successes of this government, especially in the areas of fight against corruption. We are proud that we are part of this process. The fight against insurgency, the insecurity that has been predominantly our problem. We are proud that this government is doing well in that area. So in every aspect of governance, it's like we want to take responsibility and we should be held jointly or collectively accountable. Take, for instance, the issue of some of this infrastructure that is being made available to the nation so as to build and promote what you call socio-economic well-being of our people. No one member or no one senator will stand against this kind of thing. I want to tell you without any fear of contradiction, we all individually and collectively share in the aspirations of Mr. President and the direction of this government as a democratic government. Especially in this period when you are in the election period, we must have to collectively work together, to deliver together, so that by 2019 Buhari will come back to the Bila without any sweat.
Thank you very much.
That is our position.
All right. Okay, well, there are still other issues on this. We'll return to it in just a moment, but let's come to the Minister of Budget again and say, yes, it is envisaged that this year there would be a new minimum wage. And the question many people would want to find out is, has the executive, in putting together this new budget, has it taken into consideration what this bill wage bill, the future wage bill, that's talking about a new minimum
Okay, thank you very much. I'm actually a member of the tripartite. There's a committee which is working on it. But we've not reached the stage where we have something definitive. It is only when you have something definitive, then you can budget, put it in the budget, because you have to know how much are you budgeting for. And there is always a possibility of supplementary budgets as necessary. So we have not reached the stage where we can actually budget for it. We haven't reached that stage.
All right. Well, yes.
Yeah, but I have a worry at this time with what have happened in the budget. First, now, because of the cuts and what have happened, clearly, from the discourse this night, it's clear that the government will be proposing a supplementary budget, and the House is coming back. so that before they go home in September, a supplementary budget is anticipated that will be ready. It means the Assembly and the Executive will be ready. They will do two supplementary budgets. Because by the understanding, everything, or are you assuring Honorable Minister that before the supplementary bill will be going, that because the target is that by September we are done. That means it will go with the supplementary bill.
Right.
Because both of the people that will deal with it are here on the table.
I think on our own part, to allay your fears, the National Assembly will not be tied down to its own calendar against the national interest. I want to give you this commitment. That in the event the executive arm of government consult with our leadership and they want to present something that is of national interest as important as these budgetary issues, I want to believe that the leadership of the National Assembly will be 100% disposed to even reviewing our calendar to be able to accept some of these requests from the executive arm of government, because I don't think our vacation would be more important than a budget process that is of national interest. I give you this commitment.
All right, there are issues to still raise on that, but we'll just pause a while and try and take this call. That's our first call tonight, coming in from Birnin Kebbi, and this is one of our regular callers, Umar Anache, calling in from Birnin Kebbi. Hello, Umar. Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ciro. You see, the issue is that National Assembly like to squander everything. And the problem of Nigeria is, in the past, we lost it. That is the problem of Nigeria in the past. We failed to save. And National Assembly wants to squander everything. They raise benchmark from whatever in order to have more money spent, instead of leaving the benchmark like that so that we'll have more money to save. This thing it's not good for a country like Nigeria. Mr. President raised concern on the issue of budget. I'm particularly concerned with the project of their own, the inclusion of project of their own. I'm not concerned with quoting, because when you consider the percentage quote, actually it will not stop the executive from executing those projects per se. But I'm concerned with a project of their own. Most of these projects, they are not necessary. It's a project like spending, buying motorcycles, buying wheelbarrow, buying kikene pipe. It is not necessary. So that is why I'm concerned with the project of their own. And even the project that they say is with the people. Forget. Even the former INEC chairman has said it. They turn around and maybe request certain percentage of the project they have included in their own. So I'm concerned with this project of their own. Therefore, I want people to take ownership of the budget, to consider them necessary, to make sure that every kobo is accounted for. May God continue to bless our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Umar. Well,
yes, I think, what I have to say about his observations, Umar's observation, of course, he's been quite patriotic for raising some of those concerns and also reiterating on the concern of Mr. President. But it's like my answer will always be repetitive. We look at ourselves.
You've answered much of the things.
Yes, we look at ourselves as representatives of people. For instance, if you want to tell me that maybe empowerment by way of buying motorcycles or keke napep for youth to be engaged in gainful employment. When you cannot provide sufficient employment, for instance, formal employment, then you now provide casual employment for members of the public, especially youth. I don't see that as being unnecessary. And if you think giving a motorcycle is unnecessary, giving a keke napep for a youth to operate and engage himself in a useful business is also unnecessary. What now would you say about giving 5,000 naira each to household in the name of what they call conditional cash transfer, which is also a government program? Social safety nets. If you think giving a motorcycle is unnecessary, then do you think it's also necessary to provide just 5,000 naira for a household for sustenance? We are doing that to consolidate on Mr. President's policy of empowerment and ensuring that our youth are engaged in businesses, not simply relying on government or expecting to be employed by government. It is a reasonable expectation of the National Assembly, and I feel it's also a very reasonable intervention that we're giving. It does not have any personal or selfish connotation. And secondly, the issue of members going around to take benefits from the project they provided in the budget, that should not be counted. It's quite inconceivable. Inconceivable in the sense that we don't implement such projects in our offices. These are projects that we provided in the agencies and ministries. The implementation lies in the hands of members of the executive arm of government. And I challenge any member of the executive who can give us a name or record of any individual or member whom after providing a budget under his own agency goes around to ask him of any stipend or any money from him. This is completely inconceivable. We don't do that. We only provide the interventions by way of budgetary provisions, and the implementations are done by the executive and agencies of government. We have no hands in implementation. But the worst part of the thing, Cyril, is the fact that no matter the kind of explanation you offer, unfortunately, the National Assembly has been the endangered institution in our democracy, which you must help us change the perception, the narratives. Whatever you say, whatever you explain, as long as you are trying to defend the National Assembly, we have already been unfortunately exposed to be the endangered institution. While in the real sense, we are even the closest institution to the people. We are really bearing the concerns of our people. I want to tell you, look at even the traffic in town, the traffic. The moment you call National Assembly off, we are on break. Even the traffic in Abuja here changes. It is because people coming from our constituency to take off one advantage or the other cease to come because they have nowhere to report to. They will report to a minister, and they have no access to the biller too. We are their billers. We are their party. We are their ambassadors. So all these things we are doing, Cyril, I tell you, we are doing it in good faith, and our intention is ordinarily and basically to supplement Mr. President's effort to carry youth alone, so that people will be engaged in gainful employment. And at the end of the day, we now call ourselves victors.
Okay. Well, again, the other part of the concern that was raised by Comrade has to do with, well, even if the National Assembly says at any point in time the recess cannot override national interest. But we are looking at September, perhaps October. So,
September.
September. So, the second part of that question still hangs. Is it that we should expect that all this will be rounded up before September? Or do you risk sending in 2 supplementary budgets?
I want to say that part of the observations raised by Mr. President was the cut in the provision for public service wage adjustment and pension. And part of the provision for public service wage adjustment and the pension were to take account of any agreement that will be reached for implementation before supplementary comes. So Mr. President had in advance, in anticipation, provided for this, that yes, I have set up a committee. Yes, the committee is working. Yes, they are likely to reach an agreement. Yes, I may not anticipate that I will bring a supplementary after the agreement has been reached and I have given the go-ahead. Because after the agreement has been reached, it may be applicable at the federal level. Mr. President had made a preliminary provision pending what will be agreed with the labor, with the workers and the respective states, because whatever is agreed at the federal level cannot apply across board in all the states of the federation. It will be as the states are able and according to. So this is why Mr. President raised that objection. And I'm glad that in accordance with the tradition of the National Assembly, that whenever and in accordance with the standing orders of the Senate and House of Representatives, wherever a question of national emergency arises or national priority arises, the legislature would substitute it bread. And again, finally, on this matter, it is a lot urgent because of pension. Because there are elements of pension that, on the contributory pension, you must have your own provision so that you contribute, so that the workers' pension, when it is due, can be paid. And there are those that are of the old stock, the pre-2004, 2006 pensions, which, unless you provide for in the budget, it cannot be paid, because the president, under the law, will always say, what is the right thing? What does the law say? And if there is no provision for it, the president will not dip its hand in the treasury and take the money. That is why he's saying, I've raised issue that you cut it. And in the supplementary it's bringing, is going to be a top priority.
Okay, we'll still keep a hold on that for the moment. Let's go back to the phones now. We have Patrick calling in from Delta. Hello, Patrick. Thanks for staying on the line.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the executive has succeeded in painting the House of Assembly black at every opportunity that they have. They say they are peace, they are this and all that. But going deep into the discussion today, the minister said that there were some courts that they did not consult them, like the fencing. I want to know, please, those fencing, did you specify the schools? Fencing of schools. Did you specify the schools so that those budgets will not be repeated again, and a particular school will be repeating and repeating and repeating? So did you specify the names of the schools that those funds were allocated to? Because every little thing they will keep calling the House of Assembly, the National Assembly criminals. This is not how to operate. There are different arms of government, and everybody needs to work together. So if they have some challenges, some things that they do not understand, I think it's important that you make the National Assembly understand them, and the public also to understand them before you go public. That's my take.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. The minister will quickly respond to that issue. Were those schools specified?
Yes, it's all. Every single unity school, 104. There are 104 unity schools, and they're all to be covered. It's named there, 104 unity schools, so they were specified.
Okay.
Okay, mostly there were some which have been fenced, so those ones are not included. But I'm sure the Nigerians are aware of the challenge, particularly the most northern parts, where we had the challenge over schools in Yobe and so on. And if you go to most of those schools, they are without fences. They are just the way the savannah is. And President Buhari says, look, I can't allow our children to be exposed to that level of insecurity. And he provides for it. So that is one of the things that is a priority under at the behest of Mr. President, that it has to be restored so that they can fence all and assure these children of their security.
Okay.
And maybe I just would like to also say that at no point did Mr. President refer to anybody
in the executive
as criminals.
Now.
He just raised some issues, and he says that this is the process he intends to use to address the issues in the spirit of transparency. And he certainly never used any such language against, yes, to talk about criminals.
What he's trying to do is to call Patrick to order that he's not under any circumstance, he's not supposed to address any member of the National Assembly as a criminal.
Yes.
This is like an imputing improper motive, and it should also be a code that should be operated on this platform.
And of course, there is another person that said the National Assembly
even when
was
the national,
squander.
yeah,
those are not. It is not part of this thing. And we hold
even
the executive hold the legislature the highest respect.
Even when he came to disagree with some of these issues, even when he raised concerns, I could remember.
Yes.
The first part of his speech was greeting the leaders of the National Assembly.
He was.
But here you are, Patrick, over there, calling us criminals.
I think it was a slip. I think it was a slip. He did not call. He did not call.
Those criminals.
No, Patrick was even defending the National Assembly.
He was defending the National Assembly, yes.
Okay, at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, there will be more on issues or matters arising from the 2018 budget. Stay with us at NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Sinoni Restaurant, serving authentic, delicious, and healthy Chinese cuisine.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Ministry of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Right, thanks for staying with us. We're back with matters arising from the 2018 budget. At this point in time, let's get to hear what the people, what the citizens are saying.
We are not happy with the whole situation that happened between the National Assembly and the Executive. And up to now, we are so flabbergasted about the situation at all. The National Assembly, Mr. President, submitted the budget since October last year, November last year, and they keep it for almost 6 months before they pass it. How do they expect an average Nigerian to be happy with them? What do we vote for them? All the law that is supposed to be implemented to affect the life of average Nigeria, they are playing with it. We are not happy with it. We are not happy. All what we are saying is we are waiting for them come 2019.
Baba is trying to build up this country to make Nigeria become a great nation. But this shows us that some people are there to sabotage the effort of Baba. Please, we are appealing to them. They should cooperate with Baba so that we don't have another country apart from Nigeria. And Baba cannot Baba cannot do this work alone. He has to do this work collectively. They have to do this work collectively so that Nigeria will become a strong nation.
Right now, what we should be thinking about is how to implement the budget and how to ensure there is fiscal discipline in implementing the budget. If well executed and implemented with so much fiscal discipline, I keep saying this fiscal discipline because if you budget a particular item for a particular item and at the end of the day it is not executed, it's not going to affect the common man. But if there is so much discipline to the extent that the budget as it is today with about 31% in capital budget, and I expect that a whole lot of infrastructure will be produced and built within this year.
They are corrupt because something that the president have done, because they did the bill of quantity, they went and slashed and scattered all the bill of quantity. You know, before you have a project, you must have a bill of quantity. They didn't do it. They now make project for themselves. Most of the jobs they are doing, all this private project that they always do for their own constituency, most of them don't do anything. So I still don't know what they should call budget, like what do you call it, the Port Harcourt, this that they want to slash for 500 million naira. How can? What kind of job will you do about the airport? You cannot do something like that. You understand? So I don't think they have done anything.
Right. Voice of the people. Well, some issues raised there have to do with the fiscal year. Of course, in the opening comments on this program, Senator Itai Nang, I think, and the Minister of Budget also spoke about returning to the proper cycle of January to December. But we must ask this, what has been the problem here? The budget got to the National Assembly, the 2018 budget, in November. Yeah. This is virtually the end of June, and it only became law just about a week ago. And people are thinking, how are you going to get through this and ensure that you return the cycle to January, December? And what has been the main issue? It's always been like this. What has always been the issue delaying the passage of the budget?
In my view, like I've always said, as long as we as an institution, the legislature as an institution, is expected to do what is expected to do as far as budgetary considerations and passage are concerned, then certainly you would not expect us to just pass the budget within a blink of an eye. I agree with you, honestly. I agree with you from all moral aspect of it, that yes, it has taken a little late, it has taken a little time to be passed. But you must also reason with us that as long as we are to do the work expected of us, this is an unprecedented quantum of budget that had never been passed in the history of Nigeria's democracy. About 10 trillion. So you would not expect the National Assembly to just sit down and maybe exercise magic and just pass the budget of about 10 trillion naira over a period of just 1 or 2 months. While I agree with you with the need for the National Assembly subsequently to step up actions to make sure that we could do these things, these processes much faster, I also want members of the public to appreciate the fact that we have a lot of legislative procedures which must have to be adhered with. I have just told you now that for the first time in the history of Nigeria's National Assembly, we had subjected the money bill, the 2018 money bill, to a public hearing, which is unprecedented. It has never happened. But under this 8th National Assembly, with the leadership provided by the chairman of the National Assembly and his vice chairman, Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, they now decided to subject this legislation, because the budget itself is like a law. It's a law. It's like any other bill. Yeah. And as long as you have a bill, you must have to subject that bill to all the nitty-gritties of legislative consideration. That is ordinarily what we are doing.
Let me just intervene
But
here.
I want to believe with this kind of time we are taking to do exactly what we are expected to do, and of course, trying to also reflect aspirations of our people in what you call budgetary provisions. Certainly this delay is expected, but I agree with the members of the public and indeed the executive that we need to subsequently maybe try to be a little faster than what we had always been.
Yeah,
but this can only be improved. It can also be improved upon if you can also begin to engage members of the legislature right from the word go. Day one, up initio.
That's right.
Engage us at the committee levels. Engage us at the leadership level. When we start on the same page, I believe we will arrive at the same. We'll end at the same page.
Yeah. The solution to this is first, Mr. President, in his address, in his observations, had said that the National Assembly and the executive are working on producing the organic budget law. The budget law will address some of this and makes it a law that at least it sets a legislative, legally enforceable template. That's number one. Number two, there was the National Assembly Budget and Research Office, and part of the issues raised here were raised in that bill. Incidentally, that bill had a little bit of an accident, and it had a little bit of a very, very few issues, and is being readdressed. So by the time all these are addressed and brought out, this will be a thing of the past. Again, the effort that will be made now, that is being made now by Mr. President, to ensure that we get a December, January, is going to be a solution to the delay. On the issue raised by my colleague, the Chief Whip of the House, that there has to be an engagement. I want to say that with respect to him and with respect to the National Assembly, there has been an engagement. There was an engagement. In fact, from the time of Okonjo-Iweala, as Minister of Finance, we started introducing the process which we called front-loading the budget. And in front-loading the budget, what you do is you consult with each of the committees, each of the ministers and the ministries and departments, consult with the membership of the committees, with the chairman of the committees. The chairman of the committees consult with their members. They have input at that level. They show what project has been executed, the extent of implementation, and what should be budgeted for to complete that project, and share idea with the respective ministers on new projects to be introduced. This was done in this case because I liaised on it. They were done in this case before it was taken to the leadership level. After that, His Excellency the President held a meeting with the leadership of the National Assembly on the issues before the budget was made ready for presentation. It was not just writing a letter that I'm prepared to present a budget. But one thing is to consult. Another one is when the issues are being considered by the committees at that level, at the level of presentation, there will be some things introduced which is being addressed now.
All right, we have another caller from Kaduna this time. Idris calling in from Kaduna. Hello, Idris. Is Idris still on the line? Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, go right ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Idris. Go on.
Hello, good evening.
Idris, good evening. Your name is on screen. You're on.
Good evening.
All right.
Hello, good evening.
Okay. Well, Idris, you may have to call back.
Can I say something about the January to December fiscal year?
Yes, Minister.
Subject.
Yeah, we're still on it.
Okay. Should I?
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to make a comment on the January to December fiscal year and the importance. It's much easier because it makes it predictable. Most companies in the private sector also run on the same January to December fiscal year. And so, but for a long time now, we haven't been running on January to December fiscal year. And the further away it goes, the more difficult it is to get back. If you remember, last year's budget was signed on the 12th of June, June 12th. And after the signature, in the course of the discussions, before it was signed, we had meetings with the leadership of the National Assembly. And we agreed that we would try and go back to the January to December fiscal year. As a result of it, we started working flat out. Now, the budget process, there are so many different steps. You have to prepare the MTEF. Before you prepare the MTEF, you have to consult. And we also consulted the National Assembly before we prepare the MTEF. And you have to consult private sector. Now, so there's quite a lot of processes. We worked flat out. And people really should appreciate this. Many people don't. That we really worked flat out to be able to compress 12 months' work into 4. By October, the budget was ready. The budget was ready in October, and I took it to Federal Executive Council in October. It was approved. Before we now submitted it, the President invited the leadership of the National Assembly for a dinner, informed them the budget is ready, and it will be. And after that, they gave us the green light before we submitted it. So the point I'm trying to make is that it is not easy to achieve this January to December fiscal year. But we will not give up. This year, we didn't achieve it. 2019, we will still try. And we will continue to work with the National Assembly.
No, they have agreed that we will achieve it now.
They will achieve it. So work with the National Assembly. I'm sure
2018,
yes.
It's not 20.
So we'll continue. Because at the end of it, you know, people don't realize that Rome wasn't built in a day. The first year, if we achieve it after 2 tries, is fantastic. So we tried the first time, that was 2018, we didn't get it. We're going to try 2019. If we get it after 2 tries, people should commend both the Executive and the National Assembly for that achievement.
The old maxim, if at first you don't succeed, right, comrade. How can Nigeria break out of this perennial cycle of leak budgets?
Honestly, listening all through, I am in huge doubt, because bearing in mind that this budget was submitted 7th November, and it took to June. So in my head, what was going on in my head is to achieve December, January. It means by next week, the budget will be submitted. And that does not guarantee it. Because
of course, and you know that's impossible. Right?
7 November means that the budget lasted almost 7 months. Because
without being passed.
Without being passed. So I get worried. Yes, I agree, the process of the budget, because the last time, probably, we had the December, January budget was under the military.
No, there was 1 year under civilian government.
Okay.
Yes.
I think I better give some things because the moderator.
Okay, but looking at it, I'm happy we are thinking about it
just
was
once. That's all.
I think the moderator had said that there was a late budget.
That speaks volume. If it's once in about almost 18 years.
18 years.
Yeah.
Then there's a problem.
There was a late budget. I want to say that we did not have a late budget. we had less late passage of the budget.
Yeah.
What I say so is that,
Sure, that's the point I'm making.
What I'm saying so is that, you know, the budget, there was a budget for a budget in force. If we say that there was late budget, it seems to give the impression that there was no budget to implement. Because the budget of 2018 was signed on the 12th of June 2017, and it was run a cycle of 12 calendar months.
2017.
June 2017 to last up to June 2018. June 12, 2018. So within this period, there was a budget in operation. Now, what we're trying, so there was no late budget. And I want to say that it's like the legislature got a pound of flesh, because we intended to roll over some of the projects, cut off some of the project, roll over, and then start January. But the legislature saw that there was a budget in existence, and so they got the whole budget to run to exhaustion, and the budget got fully implemented. Now, what we're trying to do now is first to ensure that we avoid the situation that we used to have, where at the early stage, it used to finish in December. When it finishes in December, they will pass an amendment extending the capital component of the budget to March, and then the recurrent aspect lapses. But suddenly, from 2016, we now had a new clause introduced into the Appropriation Act, not from the executive, but it was introduced in the course of passage of the budget. But Mr. President accepted it for the purpose of allowing the full budget to run without the need to approach the legislature when it lapses.
All right, let's get back
to that. And that was even introduced in the last 2 weeks, or in the last 2-3 months, on the FCT budget of the Federal Capital Territory, to allow them not to have the problem.
So the challenge is to reorder our calendar year of budget.
Okay.
Because
we will achieve the intent of the president.
Okay, so
everybody has accepted.
We'll return to that in a moment. Let's try and get this call from Kaduna. Another call. Sorry, from Katsina. Abdullahi is back on the line. Hello.
From Kaduna. Sorry, from Katsina. Abdullahi is back on the line. Hello. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, and I do hope that the volume of
your
TV set is down. Good evening, go right ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Oh, Abdullahi, we're back to the same old game. Good evening, go right ahead.
I'm Abdullahi from Katsina. Okay, I would like to contribute my own quota toward to this national issue. With due respect to honorable member, as a trained economics, I do wonder how he would say that he do make their own constituency project, in the sense that they do not consider the people. In as much as they did not consider the people, they didn't make a wide and, let's say, multiply effect project. If you make a multiply effect project, you see that when you give him a work, not a kekina paperwork, or you give him a machine, a motorcycle that he will be riding, try and train him so that he will train more and more people in his society, not just to give him a kekina paper, a single person. In as much as he cannot refer it, from there you see that I have made my own constituency project. What you people are after is just to recontest, to come so that people will elect you again. You are not after what people are in need of. Go with the presidential aspiration, as I'm saying. Go with what Baba would need. Have him toward achieving what the better tomorrow that we are expecting, we the youth. But you are after people to elect you. Even if you say that you do go to Kano, come back to Abuja, and what are you doing? Tell me the situation whereby you can help your own people to work toward achieving their dream of tomorrow. To what extent can you have the youth in the sense that if you give him a kekinape to write and you be claiming that I'm doing my own constituency project, even though that I with due respect, I know that from all what you are saying, maybe you are doing, but how about the rest? In my constituency in Kazina, I know my own representative or the person that is in as much as he cannot speak. Tell me what contribution can he have to his own constituency? How can he contribute towards the development of our people in our own constituency? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, I think I was only trying to make a comparison. It's not as if I'm saying our initiatives as per constituency projects is 100% perfect. I was only trying to come up with a comparison. As long as the government can initiate a program, social safety net, that provides only 5,000 to a whole household, so I think it's justifiable for a member to provide a kekenape. I reiterate this, and that's my position. To provide a kekenape or provide motorcycle to a youth to engage him maybe in a casual employment, because the availability of formal employments are not there. So as long as it's justifiable for the government to provide 5,000 for a whole household, I think it's also justifiable. And I'm not saying in any form of contradiction. We are also doing same to complement the efforts of Mr. President to really engage our youth to be economically engaged so that they won't be idle. An idle mind is always the devil's workshop. Yeah. So it's like we are operating on the same page, going in the same direction, and we don't have any issue. The problem, Cyril, we always have, like I said, we are not only the endangered institution. Unfortunately, even with the young, not too young to run law, and even before the not too young to run law, the platform of the House of Representatives is the one that you have so many youths aspiring to come to the House. So most of these people contributed are contenders to come to the House of Representatives. So they have issues with their members. They have issues on this platform. Anyway, Nigeria is running a democracy. Everyone is free to come. The young can come, the old can come. But the fact remains that whoever joins the House of Representatives, as long as he will identify himself by the whims and caprices of the people that elected him, certainly he has to go in this direction. Everyone wants to put table on the has to put food on the table for his people to benefit from.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, still more support for the National Assembly. This tweet that has come in here from YMS Yusuf, and he says, it's high time Nigerians realize the significance of the legislative arm of government. It's very illogical for anyone to assume that it must dance to the tune of the executive arm. They are meant to checkmate each other harmoniously. I'm sure everybody.
Yes. I think that is quite comforting. That's quite comforting.
That's exceptional, very exceptional of him. I believe he must be a student of politics.
Not just,
and he knows maybe the principles of separation of powers. As enunciated by Montesquieu. And that is what is also. And it's what we have insisted to let people understand, that we are working as one indivisible government, but we have different roles to exercise. Yeah. Checking governments or checking the excesses of the executive does not mean fighting them.
No, checking the executive, not excesses.
Checking the executive, checking the executive. Or there could be possible excesses. They're human. Checking the government and checking the possible excesses of government is our duty, as enshrined by the Constitution. And we're not doing that in any way to undermine them. That is what you call the democratic interplay of the institutions of government. All right. And we have to uphold that.
Yes, Gabriel.
Yeah, no doubt. It's not just for clarity purposes. Yes. It's not just him that will be happy about that. We as an institution that could be endangered. Because talking about the institution of the National Assembly, we must not look at it from the point of view of who is president now. Because tomorrow, you might be happy with the president now. You might have a president you will not be happy with. Because for us as an institution, we will always uphold the sanctity of the independence of the National Assembly. Because if not that, we had a president who wanted NLC to go. President Obasanjo wanted, if he had the power of decree, he would have scrapped us. But for the National Assembly, who said no, institutions must be protected. So we are not mindful of that.
And that was excessive of government.
Yeah,
That
we are
attempt was
not
excessive
mindful of that whenever. But the point we are making is that the National Assembly membership always must watch what they are doing to avoid what will not be politically immoral.
Yeah. All right.
Because whom so much is given, much is expected.
And now let's come to some point that Comrade surely would be interested in, and we'll come to the Minister with that question. It has to do with the issue of job creation and this budget. How would this budget support particularly the private sector? Because all the time you keep hearing that the private sector should drive all this and government cannot provide all the jobs. What's in this budget?
There is, I would recommend people should get this, because it actually has pictures showing how you create jobs. The agricultural projects, the exports, export zones, the special economic zones. Just to give you a bit of it, we have 44.2 billion naira for ongoing and planned special economic zones across in every geopolitical zone, and basically that these special economic zones will make sure that they provide water, light, security, and encourage industry to set up in these areas, and some of them for export. So that just gives you one example. And of course, there is the social investment intervention program, which we have committed 500 billion, which includes the school feeding program, the various empowerment JEEP program, and so on. So basically, what we have done is, and we're funding housing, 26.7 billion for federal government national housing program worldwide. We're also putting lots of money in power. I said the Mambila that I mentioned, 9.7 billion counterpart funding for transmission lines and substations, 2.2 billion construction of a gas power station in Kaduna, 3.4 billion for Kashimbila transmission, 14.26 billion fast power program, accelerating gas and solar powered generation. A rural electrification access program in federal universities, 7.1 billion. Alternative Energy Development Fund, 968 million. Power sector recovery program to support it, 193.3 billion. I just give an example of just power. So the idea is to create the enabling environment for the private sector. So infrastructure, money on the railway, again, money on fixing roads, 344 billion naira for the construction rehabilitation of several roads nationwide. In every single, there's no state where we don't have in this budget a road going through in this budget. So by the time you provide road infrastructure, by the time you provide power infrastructure, you provide water, there's also provision for water, you provide all those things, that creates the enabling environment for the private sector. One of the dreams of Mr. President in transport infrastructure is a situation where you can go from any state capital to another state capital by a choice of air, rail, road, and sometimes even occasionally may be able to go through water as well in some cases. So these are the things that this budget, so there's so much in this budget to create the enabling environment to support the private sector. A lot here.
All right. Now, in addition to what the Honourable Minister, my brother, has stated, if you see the provision in agriculture, you'll see that we have about 25 billion for promote the development of value chain in agriculture. Then you have 4.2 billion on rural roads and water and sanitation. Then you go to mines and steel development. You go to industry, trade and investment. You have 44 billion for the ongoing planned special economic zones project in all over the country. Then you go to export expansion grant. You have 36 billion. Then you have 15 billion for the capitalization of Bank of Industries. All these are to provide employment. Then you go to education, and you see all that is provided for all the schools and all the areas. You go to Ministry of Niger Delta. You have 20 billion for various sections of the East-West Road. Then you go to for regional intervention project. 65 billion has been provided. If you go to Ministry of the Special Intervention Project, you have 500 billion. Then you go to the work sector. If you go to Ministry of Works, it is the largest spending of the ministries. You have 344 billion for the construction and rehabilitation of the roads. In all of this, when you have this, all the money going into the economy, you'll have the man who produces cement. He will be employed. He will engage people in the production process. He will engage the drivers. He will engage those who work in the factories. He will engage and buy diesel. He buys cement, goes to the construction company. The construction company is engaging and buying those who for bitumen, buying trucks from those who manufacture trucks. Now you get to agriculture. You get to people working in the farms, working and producing. You get to the how much about over 100 billion now is involved in the national health, the value of the implementation of the national health fund.
55 billion.
55 billion. Now, all this will generate
and that
employment.
we have to thank the National Assembly.
Yes. All this will generate employment in the different areas. The only thing I want to urge the National Assembly to do for Mr. President, to do for this country, is that there is an element. It was two sets of budget that was presented by Mr. President. The budget of the federal government, then the budget of the government-owned enterprises, about 64, 68 of the agencies. Central Bank, independent central bank, deposit insurance, and all the agencies, customs, inland revenue, and all. They have only passed the budget of the federal government. The budget of all these other corporations have not been passed. It was only 3 weeks ago, about a month ago, that the budget of customs and
FCD,
the budget of the budget of National Communications Commission for 2017 was passed. The budget of National Communications Commission and all other agencies for 2018 has not been passed. And if you look at when you go to these agencies to ask for employment, they say the National Assembly the budget has not provided for employment. If I employ, I cannot pay. So if all these the budget are passed, all these agencies will employ, because there will be provision for employment. Because if you employ without budgetary provision, you cannot pay. We're working together. We'll take. I will pray that even if it is by fiat, even if it is just to look at what the executive submitted and passed before the National Assembly proceeds on the normal recess, it will be in the interest of the economy, because all these parastatals employ 10, 20 times more than the civil service, more than the companies. And above all, these parastatals have several capital-intensive capital projects which they will award, which would also generate employment. Like the central bank, if you provide money for the central bank and you pass the budget, you will provide how much they are going to apply in currency movement, building branches, servicing many of their institutions. That will create employment, and that will create even projects and programs. And if you don't approve for this project, they will not do. So I'm pleading with I'm appealing to my colleague. We've been working together. We've been working together with the National Assembly. We will still gradually work to make sure the budget of all these agencies are passed.
I think distinguished Senator Eta Enang is making reference to budgets of those statutory agencies who enjoy
budget
special
of government-owned enterprises.
Yes, there are statutory agencies of government that enjoy special budget processes or budget consideration by the National Assembly. While I agree with him, especially when he is now urging the National Assembly to try and expedite the process, I also want to give it back to him that as far as those budgets are concerned, the National Assembly has always been expeditious about such considerations. If there is any problem, it is never in any way connected to the process of the budgetary consideration in the National Assembly.
So who does it?
It should be from the angle of the agencies of government, not from us. Like I've told you, we have recently passed the budget of the customs. We have passed the NDDC for 2017. And we have also passed that of the Central Bank and indeed the other agency of National Communication Commission.
2017, not 2018.
Of course, when you bring something late, you expect it late. I want to tell you without any fear of contradiction that we have always had expeditious considerations and there was never any cut or any interference with such budgets.
Okay.
You members of the Fourth Estate of the Rim can bear me witness that you have never had any echo or any crisis to do with the passage of the budget of such institutions he has mentioned. It is so because we don't interfere. It is so because we don't give so much even delay in terms of expeditious passage of the budget. It has been smooth all the time and all time along. You are working between us and the executive, and I think what now behoves of you is for you to speak to those agencies concerned, find out from them, and ask them why they bring their budget late, and in the process of engagement with the National Assembly.
Can I add something on this? Going back to the first issue, which is the issue of jobs that you... I just wanted to add, because it's an area of interest. The focus of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the plan that is driving the budget and driving everything that we do, is jobs. In fact, one of the things that we just did, one of the initiatives, was, and I have the report here, of the ERGP Focus Labs. What we did was we brought together private sector investors and brought all the relevant government agencies and said, what are your constraints? What are the problems that you have? Let us remove them so that you can invest. And in deciding which project to support, we look at the number of jobs. It is not just enough that you're bringing so much capital. We also want to know how many jobs are being created. And we're also introducing a policy in terms of assessing government contracts. When a proposal comes to Federal Executive Council, one of the things that the presenter has to indicate is how many jobs is that project likely to create. So we're looking at, because we're spending lots of money on road infrastructure, we're telling the contractors, you must employ more. We want to know how many people you're employing. So use more sort of labor intensive projects. We're also doing a lot of work in agriculture to create jobs. So it is a focus of this government, to create jobs, because if you give a man a job, is the fastest way to get him out of poverty. It's the fastest way.
Let me just give information about it. It's very important.
Okay, still on the
budget I'm talking about is, when the president laid the budget, he laid two budgets. He laid the budget of the federal government and the budget of government-owned enterprises in that same box that he laid on the 7th of November. So all I'm saying is, the agencies, because he's saying that the agencies brought their budget late. No, the agencies submitted their budget to the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance submitted the budget to the President. It was laid and considered along with the federal budget under the leadership of the Minister of Finance, Minister of Budget and National Planning. And together, Mr. President brought that budget of federal government, then budget of 64 or 68 agencies, and laid it on the 7th of November. Now, what has been passed now is one set of the budget. which is the federal government, what the ministries will spend, not what those agencies will spend. So that one is pending. And that is the one we are working that we should be. We are working on.
What I was just trying to say is that even when such budgets are presented simultaneously,
yes, sir,
we have always have these issues of late or delayed engagements with agencies.
Yeah.
So I now tell you to also look forward to talking to those agencies, to engage members of the National Assembly promptly. And I also wish to add to the issue of job creation.
Yeah. Right.
And I want to speak from the context of what the so controversial constituency projects. The constituency project we have been talking about does not start and end at supply of motorcycles or keke napep. I want to assure you that we are also engaged in some major critical capital projects.
Right, but some
which also engage members of the public in terms of
well, you've heard that some of those projects which you've put into could be the responsibilities of local governments.
We also build block of classrooms to improve basic education, which of course is lacking at the third tier of government. We sometimes improve roads infrastructure. We provide some facilities for other people to also generate gainful engagements. Sometimes we also provide even medical health care facilities to also improve on the delivery of health facilities, which is also part of the agenda of government. All I'm saying is that no matter what is said about constituency projects, no matter what is said about the National Assembly, ultimately, these are two institutions that have been driven in the same direction and trying to achieve the same thing.
Okay.
And will always be seen as such.
All right, but then there's the other angle. Well, the other time, there was a tweet expressing all the support. But here now we have from the other side, Mutaka, and he tweets in to say, I don't believe providing motorcycles to youths as a social intervention by National Assembly. When most of the states have banned motorcycling, how many young men Honorable sponsored to attend courses at Youth Center Kanu? It's what the youths need to have a successful life.
Anyway, let us not move back this discussion again to National Assembly.
If I may answer him rightly.
Because
you will have a chance to do that, but let's listen to Comrade.
If you watch, I've listened very carefully to the Honorable Minister on job creation approach. And I find interesting the focus on each of the projects, knowing how many jobs it should provide. Now, because one area I'm sure the minister needs to address tonight, which many people will be working, wonderful, even with the challenges of whether there is court and the supplementary coming, the real implementation of the budget is a critical issue we want to hear. Two, in dealing with that matter, apart from capturing it when the budget is being provided, in the implementation process, are there mechanisms to monitor that these jobs anticipated are created in the implementation process? Because that's very critical. Because if it is anticipated that a particular project should provide 100 jobs, are there mechanisms to make sure that at least it provides 80?
Yeah, that's
even if it doesn't provide 100, did he provide 80? Are there decent jobs? Decent in the sense of, yes, we know that some of them are periodic works, but even within those times, have it elements of decency, which includes kind of work, kind of payment, and all this. Because it's not enough to just do it and leave it, and government will feel satisfied, because that will even defeat the intention. Another area, because you raised the question of private sector and the budget process. And of course, I agree that when you have the infrastructures, it jumpstarts them. But, Honorable Minister for Planning, can we have an insight on the focus of the government on dealing with the cost of fund for the private people?
Well, the Minister will have just about 2 minutes to get down with
to deal with. Okay, there are a number of questions that you raised. One was about the implementation of the budget.
Yes, that's key.
In fact, I think that this government, in my view, has done quite well in spite of the difficulty, the limited resources. In 2016, we released 1.2 trillion capital, 1.2 trillion naira capital. In 2017, 1.5 trillion naira capital we released. And that is why you see all the activity that is going on. And so, in spite of the tight resources, limited resources, we managed to do that. And with respect to the various commitments or made by investors as to how many jobs they would create, and all other things that government is doing, we have a monitoring and evaluation department in my ministry that actually goes round to check. In addition to that, we have an implementation unit, ERGP implementation unit, which is also within my ministry. And senior special assistants to the president were recruited from the private sector. And part of what they are supposed to do is monitoring and evaluation and implementation.
All right. So we wish we could go on with that and have more of that. But then we've just about run out of time, and we must end this discussion here, except for one little matter, and the Minister can address this quickly. You talked about the burn, but you didn't say the word digit, locally, internationally.
Okay. I mean, it's about 50-50. It's about, I can actually give you the exact numbers here, because everything is set out here. The deficit, domestic sources, it's the amount, okay, the deficit is 1.95 trillion naira, financed mainly by borrowing of 1.643 billion naira. Okay. Domestic sources, 793 billion naira. Foreign sources, 849 billion naira. That's the makeup. Part of the reason we're doing the foreign borrowing is that it actually brings down the cost of funds, because the interest rates are much lower.
All right, which is what Comrade had raised there, the question of the cost of funds.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll leave that for another day when we'll extend this discussion. But for now, we must leave it here. And we must say thank you to all our guests. Thank you to Honorable Hassan Adu-Dugua, Chief Whip of the House of Representatives.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Thank you once again, Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma.
Can I just add a final thing? That all this information is on our website, the website of the Budget Office. The full budget is there. All this explanation, so people are encouraged. There's also an interactive, you can ask questions and you get answers there. So general public is encouraged to please get in touch.
And the lighter side, mercifully, it's just one this time. There's it's the authentic budget.
Yes.
We'll be saved from that.
Yes.
Well, thank you to Senator Itai Nang, Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly Matters, Senate. Thank you for being here. And Comrade Uchenna Ekwe, it's always a pleasure to have you in any discussion like this. He's Head of International Relations Department of the Nigeria Labour Congress, and of course a former member of the House of Representatives himself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. And thank you too for being part of this program. Next week we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.